Toys. How's it work, Blade? You need a specific threat in order to reveal another wonder from the Golden Age. I asked as another Sentinel Walker appeared on the holographic screen. This time a relic walker from the Crusade era called Ethon_Heavy_Sentinel. Sometimes exactly like that. Other times, I just interface with the Mechanicus cogitators on a Forge world and dig out a lost STC pattern from their data vaults. Agrippina has plenty of lost tech in their vaults, although most of it is already inferior to your personal database. The Blade AI responded on my implant, then began mounting servo arms and various weapons on the new Sentinel, like a pair of Meltalance and Volkite Culverin, then a triple multi-laser and a Lost Cannon, and lastly a twin autocannon and a heavy flamer. What is this? Dedicated models for my blank Auxilia, regular Astartes Auxilia, and then PDF Sentinels. I mused inward, while noting the clever top-mounted weapon on the old Sentinel chassis. You could use the new templates like that, yes. Energy-draining weapons like the Meltalance require a potent reactor, and thus intensive maintenance from tech priests and engine seers. Volkite weapons are quite effective against flesh, thus orcs, Tyranids, and regular cultists. But the autocannons are basic and rugged tech, available to any Imperial world with a factory base, and mobility is provided by a multi-fuel combustion engine. The Blade explained in a rational and logic manner. I sighed inward. Munitions and fuel, the bane of any long campaign. No wonder old military maxims claimed that professional commanders talked logistics instead of tactics. Now just add the compounding problem of a primitive population that couldn't even repair a gunpowder weapon or a combustion engine. Lord Lancefire, how long will you just wait around without fighting? My new Custodes bodyguard asked with a bored glance at the 3 Sentinel holograms doing virtual push-ups. Because they had arms now. I just glanced outside where the new iron ring around Forge Agrippina was churning out new space fighters, corvettes, and cruisers. While mostly fitting the hulls with internal systems to be fair, I had been the one to create and assemble the hulls. A brand new fleet of 1,000 Nova cruisers and 40,000 system corvettes. It took me 5 months of hard work, some of it in accelerated time, to grow more blank sons and daughters as crew and officers for the ships, plus new space marines. Having the tech priests of Agrippina train my tech marines for a few millennia of fast time increased their skills by a lot, and 9 more of my tech marines had even reached the level of master of the Forge. Although, when distributed over 100 Astartes chapters, these 40,000 new tech marines would barely suffice. The Blade has also been busy data mining the Cognis vaults of the ancient Forge, which resulted in several discoveries like the Paragon_War suit used by our Sisters of Battle, half of them armed with Lost Cannons and the other half with multi-meltas. 1 million of these suits would make the Sisters a bit more beefy on the battlefield. Another legion of 1 million Delax Larica suits, plus a macro cohort of 10 million Cataphron servitors on anti-grav plates, armed with heavy arc rifles or Lost Cannons, that were recorded as gifts of the Omnisia for House Lancefire, used Cloneskine pilots and Terran lobotomized criminals. Terra was exporting billions of criminals these days, and the Forge worlds had an excess of servitors as a result. I was about ready to depart, as the final adjustments to the fleet could be made in flight, and all weapons and vehicles had finished their repairs. I'll be with the Fabricator General for a while, Valerian. Be so kind and train my space marines again, I asked of the shield captain, who just frowned. A few hours of training will not make them experts, War Master. War is the forge which tests and reveals the true soldier. Valerian complained, since my blank Astartes were still lacking in melee ability. And use like 60% of your true speed. We'll select those who manage to touch you for the champion training program. I added with a smile, then vanished. I appeared beside the Fabricator, who was standing in the command center of the orbital ring, and directing millions of his tech priests with bite sermons and data hymnals, like a giant orchestra of coded vocal symbols and bursts of encrypted data strings. I suspect this is your goodbye, War Master, the old tech priest said in clear Gothic. His vox box lacked intonation, but I guessed he was sad. You're not a failed pre-March Fabricator, and your forge is equal to Mars now, in productivity, if not ancient tech and old knowledge. I encouraged him as the ships began to vanish from 1,000 dockyards and reappear among the Crusade fleet. As you say, emissary, you're leaving the orbital pirates behind? The Fabricator noted as a single drop cruiser remained in dock with a half-strength Astartes chapter on board. I'll try to prepare a blank Astartes chapter for every single Forge world. But who knows if I can? Time is short now. And in 3 months, I need to be ready to dive into the Maelstrom. My fleet will probably be destroyed, as will anyone I take with me, I muttered with a smirk in my tone. That is a rather logical analysis of your success odds. Pef Lancefire. The Agrippa machine spirit also agrees and calls you foolish. And yet, there is still a chance, right? The fabricator wondered with the same flat voice. A small chance in hell. I do have contingencies and reserve plans, but the blue janitor is also a master of plots. The wings of a butterfly can tilt the balance in either way. I mused in a thoughtful tone. The fabricator just hugged me for a long minute. Omniscient knows all. I believe he also has a plan and will not let his emissary fail. But know the cult Mechanicus will mourn your death and sing laments to your funeral. Pef Lancefire. May your death be as glorious as your life. Yeah, I'll make sure my funeral pyre can be seen by the whole galaxy. And maybe I can drag another dark god with me. There's only one left anyways. I quipped with a light voice, then returned to my ship and sat on the command throne. 2 huge wolves flanked my throne, similar in looks but completely different in everything else. Very dramatic exit, Pef Lancefire. But you're not just a man now, and our kind won the war in heaven against far stronger foes than a mere etheric reflection, the tan wolf sent into my mind, while plotting the route towards his next meal. Canis rested his chin on my knee and huffed gently. Are you trying to have me release your transcendent self, Zath? I asked with my slightly brighter mind. Your Terminator armor fits you well now. Pef Lancefire. You've grown 42 centimeters in the past 5 months, and you can defeat any of these human primarchs with ease. Even if I absorb the locked fragment in the Tesseract Vault, I would likely still lose. Not that I would risk my immortal soul to fight you, the old Tan offered his praise. The alien wolf wasn't the only one to notice my rapid growth. Although my family didn't point it out loud, I could see their proud eyes when they looked at me. I kind of matched Semni in body size now, which wasn't bad at all. Alaric was still a bit taller, and the Primaris Marine still had a head over me, but I was growing. Perhaps by the time of the war in hell, I would match my Primaris sons in height? That would be great. We could start a theme line like, I am Lancefire, and hide among ourselves in identical armors. Stellar coordinates locked. Lord Captain, the fleet is ready to depart. The Tech Marine helmsman spoke with an eager voice. Engage engines. Ares thrust to 30% light speed, then switched to Macarius engines once we're past the gas giant. Eternal Lament, take the front. I ordered as my fleet grouped for military speed formation. We should pass by Cadia and collect the broken pylons. It would be nice to lock the Maelstrom with anti-warp gates. Zath proposed as the fleet sped up towards the next genocide. I knew I kept the Tan around for some reason. He could be useful sometimes. Good idea, Zath. But you'll also need to repair the things. Maybe also install a pair of pylons on my other forts. Had enough playing with Sentinels? The Tan asked with mild amusement. What? No way. Sentinels are great. Have you seen the new Ethon model? I growled back, defending my precious toys. The wolf grinned at me, with metallic necrodermis teeth. They do look a bit like walking metal skeletons. Convergent evolution. Maybe. I lifted a middle finger in front of his mocking eyes. Damn star god. I muttered inward. Your whole race are just young children playing with toys, lead by another child. What did you call him? Star child? The Tan asked rhetorical. Compared to a being billions of years old, even the Emperor was a young child. Go scout ahead if you're bored, Zath. Our toy ships will take days to reach the next system. I demanded with a mild headache. I hear and obey, War Master. Let loose the hounds of war. Zath proclaimed heroically, then vanished. Excess. Who is the largest man in the galaxy? There are some really tall Astartes and Custodes and even taller Primarchs out there, with Vulcan towering over them by a meter or so. The Emperor could also shapeshift or remodel reality to become huge if he wants to. But there's a limit. Square cube law or something scientific like that. But this guy I found in the ruins of the Eye of Terror was larger. So massive that without my dimensional vision, I would have thought he was just a flesh planet or something like that. No wonder the Tyranids were happily eating his flesh and growing millions of bioships at a rapid pace. Oliensis was so big that corrupted beastmen and chaos marines like the Corpus Brethren were only minuscule parasites on his body, fighting the extragalactic virus infecting Oliensis and giving him a fever, by blowing up giant bleeding craters and volcanoes of pus. We should put him out of his misery. The Blade AI suggested once she realized the truth as well. It does seem a bit excessive, doesn't it? Like a parody of those fat nobles infesting the Imperium. If I were a guessing man, I would guess his gluttony turned him this way, with the aid of some warp god encouraging excess. A gravity pulse to push the fat guy into the sun? I proposed with a visible smirk. And burn the feeding elements of the Tyranids at the same time? A judicious use of the Void Claw, Lord Captain. The Blade agreed and fired our gravity weapon to change the orbit of Oliensis and make it fall into the sun. All over the sector, battle groups from my Crusade fleet and elements from nearby Forge worlds and Fortress worlds like Cadia were fighting to secure the former eye before either orcs or Tyranids got a foothold and gained too much biomass. We were actually running out of exterminatus munitions, with so many demon worlds that needed a radical cleansing. It wouldn't matter too much anyways. Very soon, the galaxy will experience the promised rapture, and the unworthy will be judged by the Divine Emperor. Tarot decks, the traditional pastime of the faithful and psychers alike, were going nuts and cards were floating in midair for hours without any explanation. The Sisters of Battle were fighting at incredible levels of fanaticism and winning at any or against any odds. Give a sister any kind of extra mechanical enhancement like a Sentinel or Paragon suit, and they could easily and rapidly demolish Tyranid tyrants or an orc boss in a minute or less. Then the last month of sanity ended. It was time to regroup and enter hell by breaking down the 9 gates of Tsench. See you in hell, Oliensis, I whispered as the fat planet burned inside the sun. All ships, we regroup at Cadia for a final check. Make the best speed and spare no munitions. I sent via the sounding board as the Central Crusade battle fleet turned around. The Leviathan Crusade ends today, Lord Captain? Lore asked from the command holidable, where 100 officers were gathered. I nodded gently as Canis blinked his loyal eyes at me. Wolf time, I know, buddy. Sparta, the ancient Terran kingdom some 44,000 years ago, had 2 kings. One of them stayed at home and managed the affairs of the kingdom, while the other king led the army of Spartans in war. I declared while approaching the command table. And that worked? Sounds like a recipe for disaster. Lore noted with a glance at our librarians. It worked well enough for 1,000 years, until the Roman Imperium conquered Sparta as well as most of the known world. Custode Valerian answered for me. Imperare Orbi Universo. The Imperium will rule the universe. It is the manifest destiny of humanity. The Emperor's will as well. There are only a few more steps left, and we will soon take the next one. We will kill Tsench and break the yoke of chaos over the human psyche. I continued with a large smile, while Oliensis shattered into screaming bits of fat and gore, burning inside the sun alongside his chaos and Tyranid parasites. The custode glanced at the main screen and just shook his head. While I do know some of His Majesty's plans, I don't know if they involve transforming the Imperium of Man into a new Sparta ruled by 2 kings. The Aquila on our chest seems to suggest this was the long plan for millennia, but the truth remains we don't know. I shrugged without care. I say it is so, and my word is enough. We continue with my plan. The custode frowned for a second, then sighed. Bold without limit, like any war master should be. Not that you're even using all that power the Emperor entrusted you, Lord Lancefire. Frugal without motive. When you could expand your fleet and army 1,000-fold easily. If I wanted the useless troops and ships of the Imperial Navy and Guard, I would have summoned them already. But that would only feed more bodies to chaos. Where we are going, numbers are not a relevant issue. I explained while my sons nodded in agreement. An alien wolf passed through the new neutron shield of my battleship like it was a bubble of soap and walked confidently next to me, while licking his necrodermis lips. Oliensis must have been quite nutritious, the fat guy. Librarian Menelaus scowled at Zath for some reason, then smiled. At least we have a veteran from the last war in heaven on our side, he added with a light voice. Last chance, Zath. You might die this time. I sent on my implant while Canis growled mildly. You think too little of me, Pef Lancefire. Some Tan also have honor and pay their debts. And I think the potentate is the same. He even warned me against backstabbing you. The Tan Wolf answered in a dignified and mind-shacking voice. Even stronger than before, as months of genocides and massacres had restored a good deal of his former strength. I never said you aren't honorable, Zath. I just gave you an easy way out. You're free. I sent back as the wolf rose to observe the strategic map and our planned course towards Cadia. Freedom isn't free, rogue traitor. Living with the shame of cowardice would be even harder. A bunch of children going to fight a mollusk god in his den. And this powerful star wolf should just stay aside and let you gain all the glory? I would think not. Zath countered in a harsher tone, then nudged Canis lightly as he turned around and left the ship like a phantom phasing through walls. See you at Cadia, Zath? I sent after him, already guessing his destination. A bit better, small, harmless human. You're starting to think like a god. Your ascension must be close. The Tan spoke in a distant voice, already speeding away from our slow-moving fleet. Wolf, Canis declared in a confident howl. I patted his soft fur, and I sighed inward. Canis was right, but missed the point as well. Zath was not the wolf we needed to save. There was a far darker wolf living inside the Maelstrom. Stooges. The star system of Cadia was still a bit of a mess after my last visit and the later debacle with a pair of dark gods that died here. Thus, while my forces prepared for the next battle, I repaired and fortified the system with my enhanced powers, with the usual asteroid forts and ice comets, plus more minefields, orbital elevators, and several space docks. Meanwhile, Zath completed the repairs to the Cadian pylon network and gathered 2,000 broken pylons inside my Tesseract Labyrinth. As more of my dispersed battle groups arrived, so did the Imperial reinforcements. The Adeptus Sororita's Golden Fortress, the Mobilitas Sanctus also arrived, commanded by Abbess Morvenval, while 3 companies of custodes escorted 3 reluctant primacs, tied and bound into huge mortifier penitent engines. The Blackstone Fortress was also escorted by 1,000 cruisers and missionary ships. Canis sniffed at the traitor primarchs tied to the mobile torture walkers, but it was likely the potent smell of incense and holy oils. Seems a bit over the top, Primarch Khan said as his Primarch brothers walked into the meeting hall. Corix just stared with hate, possibly because he had hunted the traitors for millennia and failed to kill any. Which one is Lancefire? The Sororita's abbess demanded with a clear voice, when faced with thousands of blank Astartes, all bearing the bleeding heart of the Lamenters on their shoulders. I smiled inward and elbowed Lore. I am Lancefire, he answered proudly, followed by thousands of more voices, raising it to a blank chorus chanting their own family name. Dear God Emperor, this crusade is led by an idiot, Abbess Vol muttered in a low voice, sounding a bit disappointed. I grinned and displaced the Purgator Infernabile's suit away, leaving the Abbess in her high-quality synth-skin underarmor, and then dropped her in my lap as I sat down on my metal throne. Janice sure knew how to send me great gifts. The Abbess was a formidable woman, and her assets molded nicely in my arms. I am Pef Lancefire, my dear. Now, is the dick measuring contest over, or should we continue in my bedroom? I asked, a bit curious. The Abbess scanned my face, possibly comparing it to the one implanted in her mind. Your likeliness to Holy Sanguinius is just as uncanny as I was warned off. At least the 2 failed primarchs seem well-behaved. Morven noted with a glance towards Corix and Khan. I pouted as I really meant my words about the dick measuring. Anyway, so, penitent engines for the 3 Stooges? They will lose a good deal of their combat power while bound like that. I commented a bit rhetorical. You would trust the traitors to walk free on your ship, War Master Lancefire? The Abbess answered with a poignant question of her own. Would I? Of course not. Will they be able to do anything while I kept my sense on them? Also not. The Emperor wants to test them. Second chances and such. Our preferences are not relevant on this matter, I said with a careless tone, and released the 3 fallen primarchs on their knees in front of my throne. Perturabo remained kneeling while watching me with keen eyes, while Ongron jumped to his feet and glared around with a provoking face. Mortar Ion rose slowly and scanned the room for escape doors and possible allies. Yeah, they couldn't be trusted, but that was the point. I was the War Master, so I had to deal with it. This Crusade fleet will enter the warp soon and break into the crystal labyrinth of Tsench. You 3 are quite familiar with chaos and their ways, which is why the Emperor sent you to me. A siege specialist, a melee expert, and a sneaky dude with 1,000 poison plans in his sick mind. And a pretty sister to measure my dick, I suppose. I concluded while turning my hand to reveal a pretty rose for the woman in my lap. Morven glared at me for a second, then grabbed the rose. You're exactly as lecherous as the other sisters described you. Pef Lancefire. She growled in warning and then smelled the rose cautiously. I know, my dear. I once had a dick-measuring contest with a dark god called Slaanesh. Right here, Acadia. My dick won. I confided in her and poked her chest with a finger to test the bounce. Very bouncy. Best way to attack Cinch would be through the gates _Starl. Warmaster. We could enter the third labyrinth layer directly, instead of wasting time breaching the first and second layers from the Maelstrom. Perturabo proposed with a logical tone. See, my dear Morven, traitors have their uses, even ones like the fallen Primarchs. I whispered to the pretty abbess and leaned in to steal a kiss. The sister smacked my head with the rose, but didn't fight the kiss, intently fighting my tongue with some skill. Zath, are you agreeing? I asked inward. We still need to pass by the Maelstrom and lock it down with 999 pylons, but the gates of Varl will indeed provide an advantage for your fleet. We have some defenses already in place. Just need to restore them to our control, the Tan answered after a minute-long kiss. With the pretty abbess, the kiss. Onron raised his eyes and challenged towards me. So I raised a finger and turned him upside down, making the giant pre-march meet the floor with his face. Say thank you, Warmaster, I demanded from the angry pre-march. The man bounced back and rose in defiance, so he smacked his face into the floor again. Onron, you're shaming yourself. Warmaster Lancefire killed Slaanesh and Khorne right here at Acadia, and he released us from those walking pain engines. Mortar Ion spoke next and helped Onron rise beside him. Thank you, Warmaster, Onron muttered with an angry scowl. Great, we're heading towards the Maelstrom next. Lore, you feed the Three Stooges while I get to know Morven better. I ordered and vanished from the meeting hall with my guests still in my arms. I landed in my bed with the abbess on my chest, both already naked. No romance from the angel-faced Warmaster, the woman asked as her hand measured my dick. I just kissed her again and gently slid inside her. Our children will be very pretty, Morven, and all of them blank, I explained as my fingers teased her perky breasts. Children, in a week we'll enter the warp and probably die painfully in the clutches of a warp monster, she asked quite cogently. We are not in the outer universe now, my dear. This space is my private temporal dimension. We can have 1,000 years to raise quite a lot of children. You will have to share me with a few thousand women as well, but that is my emperor-given duty. The blank genes are not really suitable for cloning, see? I whispered in her ear, while I pumped her womb full of my blessed gene seed. 1,000 years outside of time? Plenty time for romance, then. You could take me to dinner, Morven demanded as she leaned on my chest and kissed my neck. Well, the Tesseracts didn't actually require sustenance or even air to breathe, avoiding pesky natural laws via tan magic, but one meal wouldn't be a problem. Purity tapped her silver spoon 5 times and vanished from the Imperial Palace and the frenzy of packing things up for departure. So many ancient books, paintings, and sculptures being stored safely in padded crates, then moved away. She appeared in her second home, the Lancefire Spire where her big brother Patroclus lived. Big sister Janice was also here for some reason, probably planning another nefarious scheme, like they always did for about 12 years already. Patroclus, I need a hug, she demanded and jumped into her brother's arms. He was not father, but at least he was a man. She had enough sisters in the creepy sororitas, silent vigils, and familiar circles. Purity, my beloved sister, no longer clicking your heels for a dimensional shift? Tech Marine Patroclus Lancefire asked with a light tone and a wink towards Janice. It was a phase. I was 12. Silver spoons are so much dignified, though, Purity explained in mild outrage and stuck her tongue at Janice. Janice stepped closer and pecked her cheek with a kiss, then blinked her eyes and vanished. Don't ask, Patroclus warned her, before she could even decide to ask. Purity pouted, then jumped off the cold power armor and into the warm seat left by Janice. You're not packing anything? Half the palace is upside down already. I am not leaving Terra. Purity. Father wants me here. And the Emperor agreed. Patroclus answered after a minute of heavy silence. If you're not leaving, it means I can stay too. Purity noted with interest. A flash of lightning announced the old prognosticator warping in, looking high and mighty in the silver armor of the Grey Knights. But Purity knew better. Father had somehow turned a whole brotherhood of the Holy Grey Knights into house guards, while her stepbrothers from the Red Templars chapter had their base in the orbital facility called Port Stanley at the top of the spire. There was only one Lamenter on Terra, but Patroclus was special, almost like Father in many aspects. Lady Purity, always an honor to grace us with your presence. Eager to smash the recruits again, the prognosticator asked with mild curiosity. Purity raised an eyebrow as she glanced at the Astronomicon with her soul vision. The golden pyre was pulsing faster and faster, a clear sign of imminent something. There's 5 or 6 days left, Grey Knight. You still want me to train your new recruits? Purity wondered in surprise. What use will it do if she overpowered the less trained Grey Knights with warp spells again? The prognosticator glanced at Patroclus, then turned around and teleported deep inside the basement of the spire, where the darker secrets were locked. There are almost 7 days left, Purity. You can reach Forge Ryza if you depart now. Patroclus urged her with a kind voice. No, my dear brother. Father sent me to Terra and hasn't rescinded his orders, which means he wants me here for whatever happens. Probably another Black Crusade, if I were to guess. Purity guessed, but not really. Fighting one great demon in the Webway doesn't mean you are strong enough, little sister. Your mother is a dozen times stronger, and she still died. A few times. Patroclus spoke with a sad voice. Lamenting, maybe. Purity touched her forehead and felt the blue runes still there. I am immortal, at least once. I am much safer than you will ever be, big brother, she declared with a confident voice. Patroclus scowled, as if a dirty secret was involved. I'm not sure if using that gift will make you safer, Purity. Segarak is still insane, and not in the harmless way. And the Eldar all hate our father with a vengeance. The Harlequins a little less, but that doesn't make them safe. She nodded, receiving the warning for what it was. The solitaire Harlequins were quite safe for the obvious reasons. The rest of the Eldar race, not so much. So I spied with my little eye that father has reached the Maelstrom, and just stays there, Purity revealed with a cute smile. She didn't ask, just as Patroclus wanted. Patroclus sighed and waved a hand towards the holoscreen wall to produce a detailed map of the galaxy, far more complex and realistic than anything she had seen before. An icon of a tiny Warhammer blinked gently as to mark her father's fleet. Then a split screen opened to list the important persons and capital ships present. Nobody she cared for, least of all more Sisters of Battle, Custodes, and Silent Sisters. The Primarchs were interesting, though, as was Canis. He is building a wall to contain the Maelstrom. Necron Tech, most likely. Patroclus answered her silent question. Purity focused her psychic sight on the map and realized it was a real-time projection. Astropathic messages still took time to relay and translate, but they weren't so accurate anyway, so this was some kind of Dark Age tech. You can speak with Father in real time? She asked in a hopeful voice. Patroclus measured her with a raised eyebrow, probably surprised. It is possible, in dire need, but he must be waiting for something? Ah, I see. Father is always Father, even when the world ends. He added as another symbol lit up in the eastern fringe, then began moving towards the Maelstrom rapidly. ETA 4 days, faster than any Macarius engine. Purity wondered as the trajectory took the silver bone symbol through the largest tendril of Hive Fleet Kronos. The Hive Kronos organisms have been adapted to fight chaos, and Father has just requested them as his Tyrannid auxilia. Patroclus divulged after examining the map for another long minute. Even if that stupid fast ship captures some chaos-adapted Tyrannids, the warp is too big, Purity exclaimed as she frowned at the map. Not some Tyrannids, all of them. Patroclus concluded as the claw symbols of the more Tyrannid fleets vanished from the map. Damn, Father doesn't think small, does he? Purity wondered as another Hive fleet vanished. Janice returned to the room, as stared at the galactic map for a few seconds in awe. Damn idiot, calling the Necron thief for help was bad enough, but the whole hive mind? I'll punch Father in the nose if he lives, she yelled at the map. The death scream of thousands of Norn queens might break the crystal labyrinth in half, or at least kill all psychers and demons in a tight volume like the Maelstrom. Patroclus deduced, as more hive fleets vanished from the map, and the projected trajectory of the silver bone intersected many more hive fleets. It will break the galaxy in two, patricles, kill all the psychers in half the galaxy at a minimum, turn off the Astronomicon for months as well. Janice growled in outrage. Purity smiled, and two dimples appeared on her cheeks. Everything is going great then? Father will save the universe and make our enemies kill each other. Patricles nodded slowly, while Janice pointed at her with a glowing finger. You better be wrong, little sister. I am going to the Astra Telepathica and have a galaxy-wide order sent to drop out of warp for all ships in 4 days from now. Luckily, we already planned that for next week, so things are already in place. Wait, I was right. Purity asked as Janice vanished again. Even we underestimated Father, Purity. But I already suspected something. Father was always willing to escalate to unthinkable scales in order to win. He did it at Comarak, Sotha, and Fenris, then at Cadia, then with Nurgle in his garden. Why not in Sinch's Labyrinth? Would Father care about killing a billion psychers and some navigators? Patricles asked rhetorically. He wouldn't. Purity hanged the silver spoon in her belt. I'll go train the new recruits then. A few more psychers on our side would be nice if all the rest die, she decided, and teleported to floor 666 where the Grey Knights recruits were undergoing their cruel conditioning and mind-warding spells. Boys, guess who's back? She asked with a joyful voice. Back again, a morose epistolary muttered in half-despair. He wasn't limping anymore, so Purity ignored his tone. But this time with feeling. I'm going to sever you all from the warp and see how long it takes for you to die. Ready? Purity proposed with a cheerful voice as the poor Grey Knights recruits groaned. They weren't ready. Ascension. And this is the last one. Energize! I ordered out loud as the final anti-warp pylon locked in place around the Maelstrom. Only this time, it was not a primitive attempt at a reality bomb like Forge World Venatoria tried and failed. The Necrons had built quality stuff for their Tan Masters during the War in Heaven. Rugged stuff that worked really well like I saw at Cadia a century ago. The 999 pylons began glowing green, and the 4 Blackstone fortresses present opened fire as well with the Immaterium beams. It took maybe a minute or just a very long second. Time was a bit confused for a while, but then the Maelstrom unraveled into a smooth slice of space-time, infected and infested with 1,000 demon worlds and worse. Pre-March Corix patted my head from above, while his brother Perturabo just stared at me in disbelief. It's gone. The Maelstrom was closed. Perturabo spoke in a shocked voice. And it barely took me 4 days. Imagine what I could do in 6. I might even rest on the 7th. I quipped in a light voice, recorded for posterity by the Blade AI and all my keen-eared Primaris Space Marines. You're mocking the Imperial faith, Lord Captain, Sister Morven noted with mild curiosity in a warning voice. Was I? Did I claim to be a carpenter in my youth? I asked mockingly. People stared at me with confusion, except for a few custodes who got my point. Then, a gray Fenrisian wolf stumbled tired onto my ship and fell to the floor, looking exhausted. Zath did come thorough rather superbly, so I moved him inside the Tesseract Vault, where a transcendent Tan known as Neadrazatha rested as a prisoner. Perhaps the Tan was also playing me, as their kind were known to do. On the other hand, I didn't have many allies in this damn universe, except those I procreated by myself. Another ally was on the way to Nevermind. Trazen was already here, and ruffling the fur of Canis with total disregard for limb and life. Not his own body, possibly. Who is the cutest murder wolf? You are, little Canis. My wolf's godfather cooed like he was playing with a stuffed animal. Canis endured the disgrace with a stoic look, barely growling a little. Very brave of you, Lord Trazen, especially when using a borrowed body, I commented with a mild voice. The Necron Overlord turned to examine my entourage with a collector's gaze, especially the custodes and the 5 Primarchs. The Tan returned willingly to his vault, and you also have 300 custodes and 5 Primarchs in your collection, Lord Lancefire. Or should I say, War Master, the Necron observed with an appreciative tone. Did you find enough Norn Queens? I asked instead, and raised a metal throne for the new Imperial ally. Trazen sat like a king on his throne, then tapped the plasteel throne with his staff to make it glow with green Necron runes. Exactly 999 of them wore Master Lancefire. One of them even spoke and asked about you. My wife, Inquisitor Valine, warped in and examined the Necron with her keen Ordo Xenos eyes. I would not suspect anyone for giving away the secret, because her son Minilo just nodded at me from the command holodeble. See, it is not betrayal if it's done openly. I will still punish him later, but we'll need a different reason. Damn mommy boy. The Overlord of Salamace, Lord Traen the Infinite. Your adventures at the side of my husband have become legend among the members of Clan Lancefire, and especially that other time you saved an Imperial world from orcs and were worshipped as a living saint. They even built you a statue that vanished somehow, Lady Valiant announced in an official voice. Hey, it was my statue, so it can't be considered stealing, and while my profession is a grand archaeologist, I don't mind being compared to an Astartes librarian. Traen the Infinite admitted without shame. He's also the only sapient to ever steal a god, so a mere statue is barely blip on his criminal record. I added with a smirk in my voice. Traen preened on his throne and nodded wisely. So, we're ready to go steal some old books? He proposed and rubbed his necrodermis hands together. And kill a warp god while we're there, but sure. Books are important, I allowed, nodding with my chin magnanimously. The strange wolf is a tan? Perturabo asked with a perturbed voice. I ignored the pre-march and just sent the coordinates for the gates of Varl as our next destination. The Labyrinth Armada set into motion, even faster than normal, since Traen's special double-pronged ship dragged everyone like a locomotive pulling a giant train made of starships. Meanwhile, I returned to the Tesseract Labyrinth with my Necron friend to prepare the real weapon against Cinch. I had no illusion about my chances to escape the Crystal Labyrinth on my own, even less about killing a dark god in his own domain in the warp. But that didn't mean I was without options. The fulgurite shard of petrified lightning was still embedded in Vulcan's corpse, pulsing faster and faster in the same rhythm as the Astronomicon. No sacrifice is too great, no treachery too small, I mused inward as I delivered my pet cryptek to Traen, along with his control rod. Ah, a true dimensional specialist. I was indeed missing one of those from my collection. And now I see why you had to clone pre-March Vulcan. Removing the divine weapon will cause a huge perturbance in the warp. Maybe even a vortex, sucking in psychic energy and etheric identities. The fulgurite is already near Gamma Plus levels. Traen the Infinite spoke with a deep, metallic voice, while his new cryptek began assembling bits of blackstone and auramite as a shaft for the new Godslayer weapon. It even looked like a lance for some strange reason. There might be a huge wolf involved. Lehman Russ, in his mythical form. I added as the cryptek's arms fell off and disintegrated a minute later. It seems I was quite right being careful and not touching the fulgurite with my own hands. Traen produced another pair of arms and just tapped them gently with his staff to make them bind to the cryptek and let him continue. You mean a demon form, like the demon Primarchs? Fulgrim had a snake, right? The Necron asked as the glowing fulgurite got hidden under a sheath of opaque blackstone. Yes, but no. Korix could turn into a flock of crows, and he never fell to chaos. I guess it is an ancestral human myth, given substance by the warp. Fenris, the wolf who ate the sun and started the twilight of the gods. I explained with a careless shrug. The cryptek let out a pained groan of tortured metal as his head fell off and his entire metal body disintegrated after holding the Godslayer for a few seconds. Traen just kicked the head, and it rolled into his own labyrinth like a ball, then pocked the shaft of the Godslayer for a millisecond. Now it's over Gamma Plus levels. It should seriously wound even an Immaterium Geist like Cinch, but not kill it, I deduced with my bright mind. Traen just measured me from head to toe for a long minute. Don't get your hopes up, young human. We didn't collect all those Tyranids just for cleaning duty. We also have 5 Blackstone fortresses with my own, and the Eldar will likely send their own as well. I compute a 50% chance of success if nothing goes wrong. I nodded gently and waved away a labyrinth wall to show off my collection of orcs and other alien species. Billions of them. Traen sighed and confiscated a few million adamantium plated with blackstone shields from my inventory. Spell-resistant shields? They might become useful even for my immortals. Cinch and his demons use lots of fire spells. It was my turn to be surprised, since Traen rarely stood to fight in a straight fight. I kinda expected him to steal the hidden library or something. "What's going on, Lord Traen? You're normally a hit-and-run kind of Necron," I asked directly. "Orican the Diviner. You probably don't know him, but he's a decent chronomancer and a rival of mine." "You know what he says?" Traen asked in a low voice. I didn't know, but I doubted it was something good. "We're all going to die," I postulated with a defeated shrug. Traen the Infinite turned his green glowing eyes on me. "You will never die, Pef Lancefire. I am simply here to witness your ascension." The Tan said something about an ascension as well. Interesting, right? That could be useful. I answered in a casual voice. "Touch the Godslayer and see for yourself," my Necron friend encouraged me in a cold tone. So I did. Quite an enlightening experience for a second. "Starchild. Purity is also here, Father." Patroclus wrote on the ancient matrix. The timeless particles vibrated from blue to red as the message formed on the holoscreen. "Tell her she looks taller." The message arrived. Then the hologram distorted and decohered into regular photons. Tachyon network shutting down. Temporal horizon is closed. The blade sent to his implant. Purity's eyes glowed with golden light as she turned towards her brother. "He knew I could read the words on the screen," she exclaimed in outrage. Patroclus sighed inward and told the machine's spirit to hide, and the holoscreen turned off. "You are an adult now, little sister, and a living saint by any measure. That father spent his last time bottled to tell you this," he muttered as the glowing light of the Astronomicon began piercing the walls of the Lancefire spire. "I know. He loves me. I should be scared," Purity mused in a low voice, as her hand waved though the golden light, yet left no shadow. "It has begun." Armin and his band of empty armors are knocking on the door of the Imperial Webway. Patroclus disclosed as his dimensional vision pierced the mystical veil of the Astra Telepathica Million Psyker Ward. Purity glanced up as the Imperial Palace lifted off and flew away from Terra, with the Emperor and her sister Janice on board. The largest ship she had ever seen, glowing with warp wards and the energy of 1,000 engines. "And thus the Aquila flies," she answered in a prophetic voice, while Patroclus was tapping invisible keys on the noosphere, displacing stasis fields and guiding the Chaos Trader into the temporal traps of the Golden Throne. "I'm going. The child will need my help." Purity spoke in a grave voice as giant golden wings appeared behind her. Patroclus doubted the Starchild would ever need help, but he nodded anyway. Even a gram of divine favor would be worth 1,000,000,000 lives, especially Lancefire clan lives. Purity flew into the light of the Astronomicon, leaving Patroclus alone in the command center of the spire. Genestealer purging, Techmarine Lancefire, the blade proposed on his implant, just as 100 million miles away. Holy Mars vanished from the real universe. Patroclus took out a bottle of expensive Amasec and took a big gulp. Perhaps humans were meant to feel fear. After all, no wonder his father was always so cool and casual. "There is no need," Blade Lancefire. "The light of the child is purging all that already. The sky is turning blue as well." Patroclus answered as billions of Genestealers all over Terra evaporated inside the glowing light of the emergent divinity. An old Grey Knight's prognosticator teleported beside him and just observed in silence for a minute before grabbing his bottle and taking a long gulp. "Your black soul is glowing darkly, Patroclus, and the 1,000 sons are returning home," the old seer spoke in a sad voice. "Prodigal sons indeed, returning home at the crucial time," Patroclus added with a casual tone, when a moon of Saturn sunk into the warp and vanished as well. Titan, the home of the Grey Knights, hid in the last place anyone would look for it. The prognosticator finished the Amasec and grimaced. "You nobles find pleasure in the strangest things. Bitter drinks? Well, at least we're not bathing in the blood of innocence, Grey Knight. I take it you're a Herusian," he asked with a glance at the Grey Knight. "A Magnusian, perhaps? Pre-March Magnus will make a fine vessel for the God Emperor. I believe that would make me a Thorian instead. Not that it matters anymore. I can feel his divine essence in my blood, restoring youth and strength," the Grey Knight revealed with a smile, as golden light emerged from his eyes. Patroclus frowned, as his father's prediction was coming true with every passing second. The Second Crusade was inevitable now, with the fanatics in power and empowered by divine might. Pillars of light exploded from 1,000,000 cathedrals on Terra, and heavy rain began falling after 10,000 rainless years. The underhives would drown first, which is why the Emperor made sure to empty the underhives first and sent those people away on Exodus ships. The Second Flood, to wash away the sins of previous generations. You better get below and secure the crypts against flood, prognosticator. I'll be here drowning my fear away. Patroclus quipped in a light voice and took out another bottle of Amasec. Funny words from a Lancefire. An ocean of Amasec will not drown a fear that doesn't exist. The Grey Knight answered with a smirk and teleported down to floor -666. In vino veritas, Patroclus spoke softly and drank another sip. Damned Armin still escaped the temporal stasis and reached the golden throne and faced off with Purity. Patroclus grinned and deployed a low-tech bear trap, just as the Chaos Sorcerer took a step forward. The left leg this time, Lancefire, you could never let it go, even as I came to offer my services to my Gene Father. Lord Magnus and Crimson King, please save your foolish sons. Armin pleaded as he fell to the floor with a missing knee. Pre-March Magnus opened an eye from his high-rise throne. What's a king to a god? Ozek Armin, why are you here? He asked in a deep voice, filled with immeasurable pain. The Blue Janitor betrayed me and your other sons, Lord Magnus. The Great Hunger is assaulting the Crystal Labyrinth. I believed Sench will die soon. You can take his power and use it to finish the rubric. Eternal life, my pre-March, Armin pleaded, still on his knee. Excellent plan, librarian. But you're too late. My father likes reading too, Purity commented in a mocking voice, and her glowing hand caressed the forehead of Magnus, wiping away the pain and smoothing the wrinkles of the Primarch's face. Lady Purity, Pef Lancefire entered the hidden library. That's a disaster, Armin yelled in a desperate voice. Thank you, Purity. I will remember your kindness. Magnus spoke in a different voice, as his body began to change and turned into a child form, comically small on the huge Auramite throne. Purity smiled kindly and ruffled the white hair of the child. Your meal is ready, Starchild. Eat and grow up. She invited the child god while nodding towards the frozen armors of the 1,000 suns. The Starchild drew a single divine breath, and the 1,000 suns crumbled into shards of broken armor, their trapped souls flowing into the Gestalt pyre of the golden throne to be purified and fused into the essence of the God Emperor. The light of the Astronomicon expanded 100 times, while Armin vanished again, leaving a bleeding left foot on the floor. You missed one, Purity noted and poked the divine child in the temple with a finger. You're going to annoy me for a long time, aren't you? The child groaned while standing up and growing to a normal human size in a single step. I could also whisper in your ear that you're only human, but I don't like lies that much. You're a god now? Purity proposed with a careless voice. Reality shifted and Patroclus found himself in front of the Emperor Child, bottle half full in his hand. Spying on gods was entertaining, but it came with some risk, like being detected. Another Lancefire. What's a non-believer to a god? The Emperor asked as flakes of the golden throne flew into a golden armor around him. Patroclus shrugged and offered his bottle as a divine offering. Amasec, sire? The new Emperor took a sip from the bottle and grimaced at the bitter taste. I should be drinking milk, not vine. Still, since I don't have a mother, we better get solving that deal with Lady Justine. And better do it before Father meets Segarak and finds out the truth. Father might kill 2 gods again. Patroclus spoke with a warning tone. You're serious? The Emperor wondered, just as a brotherhood of Grey Knights appeared all around. Father wouldn't beat up an innocent child. You're safe, Starchild. Purity spoke in a calming voice, making the Grey Knights take up arms and glance around in a protective manner. Eat the leg, Grey Knights. We still have a leg up on that crazy sorcerer. Patroclus pointed with a mechadendrite at the bleeding leg. We don't take orders from you, Lamenter, a Grey Knight librarian yelled, then fell to his knees as the Child Emperor turned his golden gaze on him. Be so kind and trace Armin for me, librarian. We don't have long before the galaxy breaks in half. The Emperor ordered and took another sip from the Amasec bottle. Dark cells now, sire? Patroclus proposed as the Grey Knights shared a human leg between their omophagia glands. Yes, Isha has suffered enough in Nurgle's cauldron. Let's not give your father another reason to snap her pretty neck, the Star Child decided with a merciful voice, and relocated the party to a laboratory deep below, where thousands of blank children and many more failed creatures were locked inside glass and stasis cells. Took you long enough, grandchildren, Lady Justine spoke from a hospice bed. Patroclus ran to release the binding clamps and took the weak woman in his arms. Freedom. Passing through the gates of Varl was much like passing through an airlock, if that airlock was made of screaming souls, trapped demons, and murderous tan shards. Zath collected 3 of his own shards and absorbed them, and pointed to me a single shard of the potentate, used as a door stop into the webway. From the real world into the webway, and from there into the warp, and directly inside the crystal labyrinth. Quite a phenomenal feat of metaphysical engineering, to be fair. See, I taught the Necrons how to access the webway via Dolmen Gates, and this is what the ungrateful bastards made with that knowledge. Zath complained as a ring of pylons reinforced the first gate behind us. Traen collected a few shards for his Deceiver and Nightbringer collection, then shackled the rest and sent them deeper into the crystal labyrinth as scouts and minesweepers. I would have kept those 42 tan shards as backup weapons, but Traen had his own ideas, or was simply vengeful for being burned alive in the furnace of biotransference. More of this than that, possibly. You can be lashed too, I decided as Canis smacked the potentate shard into a wolf shape. You're too merciful with these betrayer tan, Lord Lancefire. Eternal torture under the lash sounds much better, Traen the Infinite observed in a cruel voice, making lash too suddenly 100 times more obedient. I don't have the stomach to eat innocence, Overlord Traen. Norn detonation in 5 solar seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. I announced as my Norn queen prisoner splattered against the webway wall and killed 1 billion demons with her death scream. Canis howled and took a big gulp with his spiritual golden jaws, leaving only a few million souls for the tan wolves. Lash 2 howled as well, while his fluffy tail lashed right and left in satisfaction, getting a bit stronger. After starving for eons inside the armored door of Varl, I expected the warp gate to be assaulted from the other side, but it's strangely quiet. Traen noted as his ship pushed through and entered the labyrinth first. Yes, someone might have invited the hive mind to this Thanksgiving feast as well. Release the Kronos Hive Fleet, Lord Traen. I urged the Necron Lord as the walls of the Chaos Labyrinth began dripping blue horrors. Of course someone did. I might even know this someone, right? Traen quipped in a metal voice, as millions of bioships and trillions of smaller Tyranids emerged into the labyrinth. You can begin the Ongron Gambit, Lord Traen, I added with a new sphere message, as the huge silence in the warp collapsed the 3rd layer of the labyrinth, and we fell down into the 4th. Our battleships and cruisers opened up with Lancefire and plasma cannons, while the Blackstone forts drilled towards the 5th layer at full strength. The hive mind must have been keeping the majority of the cinch demons busy, as the Armada had an easy ride until the 8th layer, barely losing a few dozen missionary ships from the Sisters of Battle Escorts. They were crap ships, to be fair, meant to spread the Imperial faith to barbarians, not fight head-on against demons. But in the 8th layer, the real fun started as 9 Space Hulks, 3 Leviathan demons, 9 Krakens, and 999 Chaos ships awaited for us, with 1 trillion smaller demons and 66 great demons with blue feathers. I will release Ongron now. Traen sent back, and his obliterated staff tapped the floor. I knew the butcher nails inside Angron's head will be useful one day. Like today, for example. An angry Ongron rushed forward and punched right through a moon-sized Leviathan demon, then began ripping wings and biting through feathers and made it look easy. Perturabo frowned as our Blackstone forts fired upon the 2nd Leviathan with the Immaterium beams, and the thing just blew up from 5 concentrated beams of unreality. War Master, weren't we supposed to be tested and redeemed? He asked, a bit perturbed. Ongron seems happy, though. I commented with a glance at his other brother, Mortarion. Traen took out the corrupted scythe used by Mortarion in the past and shook it a little to make it drip acid and poison. Want some? He asked in a perfect hive world slang. Mortarion's arm reached for the scythe, then drew back. So this is your test, War Master. Give us the power we crave, and kill us for the failure. The Death Guard Primarch spoke as he realized the truth and grabbed his hand with the other. Corix and Khan nodded towards me, then teleported ahead, fighting the great demons in melee with great skill. That's not the test, Mortar Ion. Take your weapon and kill those demons. Or run and hide. The labyrinth is large enough that we will never find you. I answered and shifted the Man-Reaper scythe into his hand. Perturabo watched his brother teleport into melee, then looked at me. And the real test, War Master? Everything is a test pre-March. Cinch has 999 great demons, and we don't have many Primarchs to spare. Choose your battlefield wisely. I allowed while hugging Morven with my left and Valiant with my right hand. I guess I can send the Night Reaper now. No shackles either. Trazen spoke from his metal throne as his scythe-wielding Tan appeared on the battlefield. I glanced in surprise at my Necron friend, just as my wolves howled and rushed forwards as well. Valiant leaned closer and kissed my cheek. Go, Lancefire. Have some fun before you die. I stretched my arms wide and appeared on the crystal floor inside my Psi Titan. Valiant was mostly right. A warm-up fight would do wonders for my morale. Soulless Abomination, a great demon, accused me as I grabbed his neck with my Titan's power claw. So I stepped on its feathered chest and pulled with my mighty Titan muscles, then threw his head beak first into a chaos battleship, blowing up the prow like a giant torpedo. Come, Perturabo, your blood will rust if you don't play a little, I urged the last Primarch. I hate you, Lancefire, the Iron Primarch shouted as he teleported beside me. So I drew a big breath, filling my temporal cache with cosmic fire, then released it into the Chaos Fleet and burned it all to ash like a solar flare. I guess Lionel won't be so pleased I burned 1,000,000 fallen angels alive, but such is life. I wasn't too keen on redemption arcs. My chest filled with a familiar golden warmth, so I turned and punched the last Leviathan demon with my Titan, while the sirens howled to match my wolves. Halfway, though, the big demon, my energy was spent, so I fired the Sinistraminus Psi Cannon and blew the thing apart from the inside. 3 Alpha Psychers inside the battery cells began to spasm from too much drain, so the fun was over. I'll need to ask the Emperor for a better Titan. Then I leaned back and returned to my command throne, while Sabax returned to his slot inside the Tesseract. Fun was well and good, but I did have more to do than just having fun. Being a War Master meant extra duty. Ordella and Decima. In this circus, I ordered as the 2 Omega Silent Sisters emerged from the good Tesseract. Lord Captain, Ordella spoke while her mute sister nodded in silence. Their pariah powers became visible as black holes sucking in warp energy and demon souls, and they both accelerated to incredible speed, faster than even Ongron. Great demons blew up and died at their touch, while lesser demons melted from miles away. Strategic assets, War Master? Shield Captain Valerian asked as darkness devoured the Chaos Labyrinth. Only the key to next level custode. You'll see the strategic assets soon enough. I answered as the 8th level collapsed, and the Armada fell towards the 9th and final level. I collected the Primarchs and the Wolves, but the Night Reaper Tan just stared after the fleet with dark alien eyes. You freed him? I asked in surprise. Freedom is relative, my human friend. The Nightbringer wants revenge on the Necrons, as well as the Eldar and the Orcs. And you show me how to train my Tan? Trazen said with an amused voice. While his green right, I blinked like a hidden wink. The other Necron dynasties. But why now? I asked, a bit confused. The Silent King has returned. Pef Lancefire. My Farron will bend the knee and join the Annihilation Army, unless more Tyranids arrive, and without a powerful enemy. The ancient Necron warned me with a sad voice. You'll be safe at my side, Lord Trazen. I can kill anything, I whispered as Trazen lined up 999 Norn Queens right in front of the Singularity. Of course you can, Pef Lancefire. Trazen the Infinite answered in a metallic whisper, as the blade of infinity fired the Singularity beam through the lined-up targets. The labyrinth broke in half, revealing the impossible fortress in the center. Geller ramparts at maximum. Overloading. Beta plus temporal event. Gna. Shutting down, the blade AI sent to my implant before she vanished. A second later, the Astronomican light went out, and the duty navigator's head exploded. Oops, I may have overdone it this time. Lehman Russ. The giggles of an insane god reached my ears as a sixth Blackstone fortress covered in etheric lightning joined the party and dropped hundreds of armored suits to fight the emerging Lords of Change, who came out from the mouth gates of the impossible fortress. Traen managed to twist his metal face into a scowl, just as my anger began to raise as well. For inside those light armor suits, made of adamantium and wraithbone, there weren't Eldar Harlequins but blank humans, with features resembling those in my clan, even one looking exactly as my dead brother Virion. Their pauldrons held sigils and runes of both Imperial and Eldar types, while a bleeding heart was painted on their chests. Lancefires, every one of them, but no sisters, and I suspected I knew who absconded with the females of my bloodline. "Do you like the new immortals, War Master Lancefire?" the laughing god asked in my mind, as a blue beam of Immaterium struck the nearest spire of the impossible fortress and melted a hole large enough to fit a titan. "He who fights at my side shall be my brother," I answered out loud, setting the anger away for a later date. Revenge could wait, even if someone abused my mother to create these new kind of solitaires. Canis growled in shared pain as well, just as Traen released his flying anime mecha titan modified from an old Titan recovered from the days of the Horus Heresy. Gauss flares and Psi cannons fired from the Necron Titan carved a Lord of Change into shreds of false meat and burning feathers. I called it Shiva, Destroyer of Worlds. Traen revealed in a proud voice, which brought a flicker of smile on my face. My Necron friend was also the dramatic type. It seemed Shiva needs a cape, but otherwise it looks great. I quipped in a joking voice, just as a goddess made of lightning and righteous fury emerged from the Segarakas fortress and burned a dozen great demons to ash with a single anapathic tempest spell. The demonifuge was back and seemed even stronger. "You stick your impregnation gland into that abomination, Lancefire?" Zath asked with mild horror. "Ephraim has amazing bed skills, my tan friend. But if she's here, that idiot Harlequin is not far." I realized a bit late, just as a water balloon struck me in the face. Nemerak appeared beside Canis and hugged his neck, and even scratched my wolf behind his ears. Canis was obviously confused between pleasure and the need to rip the Harlequin's hands off, so he just growled in a low bass tone. "The band is back, Captain Lancefire. Not exactly a proper theater troupe, but amusing even so," Nemerak explained in his annoying high-pitched voice. Just I began setting my troops in armor for a proper siege. Billions of demons crawled out from the mouths of the Cinch fortress, and were met with volcano lances from my knights, and then neutron lasers and magma cannons from the Baneblade tanks. "I have an army of immortals as well," Traen the Infinite disclosed in a secretive tone, as the metal bodies of his Necron race descended in a shield wall formation, using the stolen shields from my Tesseract, and an array of Necron weapons so advanced that their portable arsenal matched my tanks with ease. "Meet Olivia and her Castigator Blinding Hot Titan," I countered, producing the third Castigator Titan towering above all the armies present, and blinding everyone with a salvo of volcano cannons and even larger plasma annihilator gun. Taking huge strides, the Castigator breached the impossible fortress first, and swatted aside several great demons who tried to block her way with a single slap of the giant power fist. Perhaps I wasn't wrong to give a giant titan a large melee weapon. It sure seemed useful. "I want one of those, please," Traen pleaded in an impressed voice, and two more Castigators appeared and began punching at the Chaos Fortress from different angles. "Damn my bleeding heart." He also said the magic word, "Only if you give yours a cape," I decided with a mocking voice, mostly to annoy the blade if and when she recovered. Traen nodded seriously and tugged at his own metallic cape. "It would look awesome, I admit. Not some useless human fabric, though. Maybe a hyperweave cowl or a shadow shroud." The Necron Overlord mused in a thoughtful voice, while Nemerak stared at both of us in obvious outrage. "Pay attention, damn human. The battle to end the great enemy is taking place right now. An epic saga of galactic," he yelled with passion, but I ignored the pariah solitaire as the Larica, the Lax cohorts, and my Primaris Astartes joined the battle as well. "Breach the fortress and loot any books before our allies get too many," I sent as a standing order, as more units rushed into the impossible fortress, followed by Sisters of Silence for extra support. The cyborgs and the Space Marines had their own brains, after all, and enough training and doctrine practice to manage the fight by themselves by now. Feeling a bit peevish, I began displacing billions of orcs and feral tyrannids at different mouth entrances, making the whole thing a race for the center. There would be no controlling the Tyrannid auxilia like this, when 1,000 Norn queens have died and broke the crystal labyrinth in half. I took stock of my companions, finding the Sisters of Battle and the Custodes barely bleeding from their noses a little, while Lady Valine shivered inside my tesseract and mumbled prayers. Her pretty eyes were gone again, exploded at the same time as the Norn event took place. Psychers were so fragile, the poor things. My blank children and grandchildren were all fine, as were the Necrons and the Tan. I was feeling pretty good about this battle when the ugly reality of 40k showed its face. Falling through the warp cracks above, space hulks and void whales distorted by Tyrannid flesh-crafting bomb-dived the impossible fortress, crashing though the pretty colors and bird spires. The hive mind arrived for the feast as well, and millions of Tyrannid tyrants and other biotitans ran into the depths of the impossible fortress, while billions of Genestealers and Hormagaunts formed a blade blender to massacre lesser demons, and even struck at nearby orcs and Necron immortals. The Tyrannid organisms were not immune to magic spells, though, and they died in droves as the blue and pink horrors answered with warp fire. My Tesseract vision also caught several Norn emissaries vanishing into the Chaos Fortress, invisible to any human or demon eyes. I needed to hurry, or risk losing the race. Primarchs, prepare for deep strike. Custodes as well, I ordered before turning to my left and stealing a kiss from pretty Sister Morven. For luck, we're going to die in so much pain. The joking Harlequin added for no reason as I urged the Singularity to plow though the broken wall of the Chaos Fortress and create a breaching ramp. I would prefer to, I began to say when a loud howl covered the battlefield noise and raised the hairs on my arms. Those idiot orcs, they released the big bad wolf way too soon. Nemerak spoke in a worried voice. Leman Russ? Trazen asked with a curious voice. The 5 Primarchs present turned towards me with worried eyes, even Angron, who normally didn't care about any danger. That was the power in a name. That and the loud howl that shook the warp itself. I'll deal with the wolf Primarch. You guys just kill any demons that bar my way, I ordered in a confident voice, and even Canis tilted his head at me in doubt. So much pain, the Eldar Solitaire added for no reason. Didn't he say that before already? Turtle formation, castigators in front, I ordered as my Imperial Knights and the armored units formed a protective shell around the Sisters of Battle and the blank Sentinel Auxilia. The Chaos Fortress shook as the howls of the big bad wolf got closer. The deeper we went inside. Rejoice, brave humans and allies, for we all walk in the shadow of the immortal Emperor. Sister Stern chanted as she dropped beside me and reduced her lightning aura to a skin-tight field. I grabbed her ass and lifted my faceplate to taste her immortal lips once more. You look so hot today, I whispered for her ears only, which blushed to their tips from my words. Idiot. Now is not the time, Ephraim muttered annoyed, and she pushed me aside with enough force to send me flying a dozen meters. I love strong women. A giant wolf paw shattered the blue floor where I had been a second ago. Damn my luck. Kairos. Time froze for a second, and I glanced at the Tempor Mortis Vambrace to see the 9 dots glow golden. Strange, right? The diodes had green, red, and blue in the menu, and not golden. Not that time even existed properly inside the warp. I looked around the frozen army that surrounded me, and the 300 custodes also had glowing golden eyes, while the Eldar Harlequin mimed a careless shrug and blew me a kiss. Fortunately, not with his infamous pistol, but blowing on his palm. Canis growled something in wolfish that made little sense. Or maybe not. I looked up and saw the giant wolf, frozen in feral rage. But it was not the wolf I was looking for. Canis was always right. Mentally, I scrolled through other possible wolves and narrowed it down to 2. Frecky the Swift and Jerry the Cunning. Jerry, is that you? I asked curious. The huge wolf pushed through the temporal differential to glance at Canis, then tried to swipe a paw at my loyal companion, then vanished in my tesseract, locked tight with adamantium and blackstone shackles. Another loud howl shook the crystal walls of the fortress. Close enough to be heard, but far enough that my dimensional sight only caught a shadow blurring through orcs and tyranids deeper inside the maze of walls, before it vanished, leaving only eviscerated corpses behind. That must be Frecky then. Quite swift for a wolf, if I may say so myself. That wasn't a pre-march, Sister Stern deduced in a curt voice, while airplane-sized golden wings lifted her up above the army. Close enough, though. Russ had two wolves as his companions, Jerry and Frecky. The first one is Jerry. I suspect they were kept locked in a cell, and the orcs I sent forward managed to liberate them. I explained to the curious crowd. Zath walked next to me and smelled my glove, while also doing some tan magic to scan the huge wolf I just captured. It was not the orcs that released this wolf, Lord Lancefire, and he targeted you believing you were a demon, not a human. This was the cinch version of our Onron protocol. The tan informed me in a warning tone. The warping influence of chaos, of course. We advanced further in, sometimes blowing through walls and gates, sometimes following wide corridors large enough to fit entire warships. Then we reached the Inner Sanctum, the hidden library, mostly by following the dead corpses left behind by Frecky the Swift. One final push, and I could return to the fringe. Should I test the Primarchs further? Was it even necessary? Decisions. We make camp here. Perturabo, you're in charge of the siege. I spoke out loud, while bringing out more portable Geller ramparts and the army of Cataphren destroyers on their anti-grav platforms. Lost momentum. I hear Khan complain to his brothers, but I ignored that. Jerry was a clear sign that the Dark God had noticed our incursion and was already deploying traps and other contingencies. Someone smarter should take over the next part and make themselves the target. Instead, I gathered my wolves and went to visit Jerry inside the Tesseract. Lash 2 approached the snarling Fenrisian wolf and stabbed it gently with a phase claw, then licked his claw with a visible frown. This wolf is closer to Canis than anything else I've ever seen. Should we undo the mental programming? The Tan Shard asked out loud. I looked at Canis, who simply stared at the larger wolf with focused eyes. Whoa, HRRF, Canis decided a minute later. Clever as always, but risky. Oh well, Canis knew his business. I released the shackles and took a few steps back. My wolf and the Russ's companion hurled into a giant fight of fangs and claws and angry howls. Imperial diplomacy at its finest, Zath commented while scratching behind his ear with a hind leg. Stupid, Lash 2 offered without prompt. If it's stupid, but it works, I quipped lightly, and began scratching the itch behind Zath's ear with my trained fingers. I had centuries of practice with Canis after all. He's not even a real wolf. Lash 2 complained with a disgusted glance at his fellow Tan. Jerry the Cunning, rumored to be smarter than most humans, even outwitting Russ a few times, I said while Zath purred under my hand. I was talking about this domesticated shard. Lash 2 muttered while his phase claws sprang out and retracted in the rhythm of the wolf battle in front. You're missing the point, Lash. Jerry managed to bypass the Primarchs and the Custodes and targeted me as the primary threat among thousands of Astartes. That makes him equal to a Custodes general that won the blood games to infiltrate the Imperial palace and strike at the Emperor. Neither of you saw him, I pointed out just as Canis managed to subdue the larger wolf and held his neck in his jaws. The two Tan looked at each other and sighed in tandem. We were in the warp, Lord Captain. Names have power, Zath admitted with a cautious tone. Jerry, can you find your cold alpha? Lehman Russ? I asked just as Canis withdrew at my side. The huge wolf measured me and my wolves with intelligent eyes, then sniffed in distaste. Woof. Good enough. We were not friends, but had a common goal. Nothing different from most of my allies. We should recover Frecky as well. That damn wolf is breaking all the speed records running around. I commented as we returned to warp space and the thundering sounds of volcano cannons and neutron lasers drilling through the walls of the hidden library. Perf! I heard a light wolf sound as Jerry melded into a shadow and vanished. Did he say we should wait? I asked Canis, a bit confused. Canis held up 4 glowing claws and started retracting them. By the time the claws were in, 2 more wolves landed behind us, one white and one gray. I saw my son Menelaus smack his face with a metal palm at the sight, before turning his attention back towards the siege. Crashing in slow motion, The walls of the hidden library fell to reveal countless bookshelves and hundreds of lords of change lying in wait. Or perhaps an ambush. Loot everything and kill the parasites if they interfere, I yelled out loud, urging my army to advance. Canis ran forward and ate a few books, including the leather covers, before turning and snapping a great demon in half with a projection of golden jaws. Like a plague of locusts, we entered the precious library and began grabbing everything, our looting sacks already prepared to load up as many books or artifacts as possible. I had the biggest loot bag, of course. The Tesseract had enough space to store 1 billion planets, if and when I could actually grab a whole planet with my mind. Meanwhile, books were far easier to steal. Nemerak lead his merry band of solitaires on a looting spree as well, sometimes fighting and stabbing reluctant books before throwing them into a magic bag without end. Deeper inside the library, orc looters were in heaven, beating up complaining books and hacking apart demons and bookshelves, and often each other. Genestealers and Tyrannid tyrants chased after fleeing demons that tried to save some precious book or another, until they encountered a pair of blue horrors flying on magic carpet and flinging around weird spells, from pretty butterflies and soap bubbles to acid rains and chain lightning. "Get those two, my wolves," I asked on whim, and 5 wolves barged into the hidden library. Frecky reached the targets first and ripped one demon in tiny bits, then ate them. Jerry grabbed their magic book instead, while Canis and the tan wolves did a little tug of war with the second blue demon, until the horror got torn in 3. Curious. Boring. A great demon with 2 heads spoke in tandem, making the other demons draw back in obvious fear. This was Kairos Fate Weaver, a famous lord of change. 3 questions, Fate Weaver. Will Cinch die today? I asked on a whim. The 2 heads turned to look for me and failed to locate me. Perhaps. Not today, the heads answered in mild confusion. What is my name? I asked next, moving closer to the great demon. A wave of something passed over me, reminiscent of the scanning wave I felt inside the Pharos. Probably identical, if I remembered correctly. Pef Lancefire. One head answered while the other used a claw to scratch his cheek. Curious indeed. Someone without a true name, the other head answered in a pained voice. I changed my 3rd question, which didn't matter anymore. After I kill the blue mollusk, the twin-headed Aquila will need a twin-headed servant. Will you become the twin angel? My temporal vambrace glowed golden again as time stood still. Yeah, the gaze of the Emperor was upon me, so I stepped through frozen time and touched the great demon with my right hand. Golden light exploded from my chest as the Emperor's sword inside my heart emerged to await the Fate Weaver's reply. No, you will not steal Kairos from me. A blue voice ripped through the warp as tentacles rose to grab the Fate Weaver before it could turn. We make our own fate, the 2 heads answered in tandem, for once in agreement. Kairos_Fate Weaver died and lived again. Curse you, Lancefire, Cinch yelled as his great demon transformed into a twin angel, the blue feathers burning off to become white and gold. Fight me, janitor, I demanded while speeding up to combat speed, the Emperor's sword glowing in my hand. 1,000 eyes opened on the mollusk body, staring down at me mockingly. Death. I should have remembered Saturn. Holding the Emperor's sword didn't mean I was worthy of using it. My first strike bounced off painfully, and the sword deflected away from an impenetrable magic shield and flew off, like a boomerang guided by its own mind. It landed point first in front of the demonifuge, and Sister Stern's hand grabbed the pommel by instinct. I didn't wait for the consequences of my failure to crush me. Crossing through the labyrinth and withdrawing the army a good distance away, while moving my Blackstone forts into formation around the Chaos God. Segaraka's fortress joined the circle of 6 and even fired first, its blue Immaterium beam now tinged with hues of black and another color I could only taste and not see. Did you wash your neck this morning, Cinch? The demonifuge asked in a serious voice, as the sword in her hand began to glow brighter and brighter. She was not ready for this, but at least the sword didn't reject her. Nobody was ready, in fact. Cinch was not a god of magic and sorcery for nothing. The demonifuge strike barely left a white mark on the shield of the dark god, just as the 5 Primarchs joined the attack. Korix and Ongron were the only ones to even leave a mark, before my 5 Blackstone fortresses fired their beams as well. It was only then I understood the stupid penumbra prophecy that drove Abaddon to his 12th Black Crusade. 6 of the ancient weapons were meant to kill a god when fired together, and 2 of them were even more powerful than normal. The Black Lament had a black beam modified by the Emperor himself, while the Mobilitas Sanctum of the Sisters of Battle added a golden beam that sang like a choir of angels. In less than a minute, the blue warp shield covering the dark god shattered into crystal shards, and then the beams began to burn through eyes and tentacles, while the army battled the remaining demons with increased morale. My changed perception even showed me the morale bar on my units, though I doubted morale was so easily converted into numerical units. Deploying 666 pylons now. Contingency Z now in effect. Zath warned me with a mental impulse, as the Necron pylons vanished from the Tesseract and appeared in a sphere around the hidden library. Zedha, leave the enemy a path of escape and sit on that road by myself. It was the worst plan of them all, especially since it relied on the untested Godslayer lance. Then again, compared to the Demonifuge and the Primarchs, a lone Lancefire would seem mostly harmless. Die well, Lancefire, I heard the joking Solitaire encourage me, while riding the head of an avian great demon and stabbing its eyes with his black-bladed Athame dagger. The Lord of Change died forever, and Nemerak grew even stronger. Damn, the Eldar Harlequin was too cool to watch. Maybe one day I could match him if I didn't die in the next minute. Take care of Purity, Canis, I sent to my loyal wolf as I moved to stand on the death ground left untouched by the pylon's area of enforced reality. As expected, Cinch didn't wait to die under the siege, and half of its mangled body and burning tentacles moved towards the only escape route, guarded by a lone human. You stand in the path of a god, mortal, Cinch shouted with a slightly desperate voice, far less impressive than he likely wanted to appear. I take it you just want to run and leave all these precious books behind? Why are you in such a hurry? Stay for me? We could have tea, I proposed in a mild voice, and took a step forward. A warp spell of some sort tried to wash me away, only to pass over me with no effect. Or rather, I drained a small bit to empower myself, while the rest carved a path of destruction behind me. A mind-scrambling spell? I looked back to see the Tyrannid hive mind retreating in pain, blood and gore flowing from its eyes and mouth. I wasn't even the target. I stood between 2 gods by myself. Time to make my death mean something. That had always been the plan. After all, I died fighting Slainish, and will die again fighting a god. It was inevitable. 2 swords appeared in my hands, a Phase Blade and the Sword of Dawn, or the Dawn_Blade, the chronophagic weapon I was gifted so long ago. Only now, I was a far better swordsman than I have ever been, mostly by stealing blade work from a demon blade. To my surprise, the Phase Blade worked far worse than the other, barely cutting into the dense warp flesh of the Dark God, but the Dawn Blade left huge rents, each adding more knowledge into my mind. Cursed thief, you will pay for your insolence. Cinch wailed as my strikes caused real damage. I understand and forgive you, little blue snail. You wanted to rise above your pitiful fate, wiping the floor of the Old Ones' library with your slime. But see, we had such a wonderful cuisine on Terra. Snails are a delicacy. I quipped in an effort to annoy the warp god and make him lose some tactics to anger. I am not a snail. It's only your lies. Damned Lancefire, Cinch shouted with words that hit me like hammers. Fried in olive oil, boiled alive for soup? Do you even have cooking books in this library? I wondered as the warp god bulged into a muscular mollusk to crush me once and for all. You will boil alive for all eternity. Pef Lancefire, the mollusk god promised, and then formed a giant mouth in his bulge and just ate me. I dropped the useless Phase Blade and drew out the Godslayer made from the Emperor's Fulgurite, then stabbed the roof of the mouth just as the flesh walls crushed down on me. And this is how I died, fighting a warp god. Again, a mortal was never meant to touch such a power like the Fulgurite, the essence of petrified lightning of the Emperor of mankind. Even Perpetuals would die doing that. That would have been deadly enough, except for the part where I drew this weapon out from Vulcan's dead body. So Vulcan wasn't dead anymore, but he was also alive back in the fringe with my other teachers in the Temple of Knowledge. A paradox, right inside the God of Magic, far deadlier than I assumed. Vulcan emerged alive and angry beside me, and certainly very pissed. "Where are we, neophyte?" he asked loudly, before noting the situation and grabbing the Godslayer in his huge hand. I stabbed the Dawn blade downwards, while Vulcan kept the roof of the mouth from crushing us. "The blue mouth is Tsench pre-march. Try to kill him before we die." I urged the good pre-march, just as I remembered my promise to Zath, and released the transcendent Tan from his Tesseract vault. I was dying, and only the drain of time via the Dawn blade sustained me to watch the pre-march and the Tan Star God go to town inside the Warp God. They made a good team, especially after the Tan crafted a nice suit of armor around Vulcan with a single hand wave. I was still dying a bit slower, passed through death, and reached the other side. It sounded much easier in my head before. Actually doing it, dying sucks. Like a controlled demolition. When it's your own life you're demolishing. I should have died. I did die. Then I saw the face of a god, and it wasn't even the Emperor. Ennead's cold eyes stood watch over the gates of death, and I felt judged and sentenced. I did kill plenty of Eldar, to be fair. Enough of them to give birth to the Eldar god of death. And as Tsench died around me, I died with him, and stood face to face with death. Ennead's eyes changed to pity, as if a worse fate awaited me on the other side. And then I died for real. Being dead sucks. Sanguinius was right. Chapter 666. Like I said, being dead sucks. No body, no sensations, just a soul floating like a snowflake in a hurricane of more souls called the Warp. And yet, I was not a normal man. Not even by the strange standards of 40K, which let pretty normal humans fight abominations like a great demon, and sometimes even win. I glanced with my dimensional vision at the transcendent Tan, who managed to frown at my strange, dead but still around state. Then I grabbed the nearest block of blackstone and moved inside it, or the other way around. Soul movement is not like, whatever. I guess there are tiers of being dead and tiers of divinity as well. I stepped through death and reached the lowest rung of divinity, which wasn't much better than before. I could still only control my own tesseracts and their contents, but instead of moving them inside or out, I was moving myself. Okay, there was also another hermetic core unfolding inside my soul, but doing something with space, beside the suns and time like the first two. I guess that made me the first true space marine, right? The blackstone block must have massed multiple megatons, but it felt like clay in my mental hands. So I crafted a clay giant to smash the mollusk harder. With a Necron pylon growing green in my hand like a club, the size of an orbital elevator, but still a club. I was still pissed of having died too early and not draining enough time and knowledge from Tsench. I dare you, break into 1,000 little snails now, so I can boil you for my soup in smaller bits. I dared the Dark God. My words shouted from a castigated-sized clay golem. This was exactly the vision the Eldar Farser had about the breath of the gods. Did I care? Not yet. Tsench died hard, even if constrained by Necron pylons, fired upon by Blackstone forts, and gored from the inside by the Fulgurite lance wielded by the other Vulcan. I should also probably care about the paradox I have created, but if the Imperium could have 2 emperors, it could have 2 primarchs as well. Or maybe send them to different imperial courts? Anyway, smash and smash. Eventually, Tsench did attempt to split and run away with several octopus's bodies, but Zath and I have planned for that as well. The Tan have already won a war in heaven against even stronger warp gods. The reality cage locked the fleeing fragments and then cooked them in solar flares and cosmic fire, leaving only French cuisine for a hungry wolf or 5. While the wolves ate the remains of a well-cooked warp god, my disembodied soul floated towards the remains of my old body. The Terminator battleplate had been crushed into a mangled state by Tsench's mollusk mouth, and a single item was still intact. The null box with the Emperor's warrant inside. And not only the warrant, but also a drop of my own blood, floating inside the null field of the strange box. I entered the box easily and floated around for a minute, ignoring how big the thing was on the inside. Then I poked the blood drop and reversed the feeling I got when poking Vulcan's frozen body when impaled by the Fulgurite. Traen the Infinite was indeed a genius, pointing me to such an easy resurrection method. My blood, my genes, my soul. I suspected I was only a test subject for another, more important body to resurrect. Like, for example, his own Necroner body, if a drop of his blood could be recovered from the sea of time. On the other hand, being dead sucked, and not in the good, pleasant way. I should have expected the pain, but again, pain was better than death. It took 18 years of accelerated growth before I stretched my new teenager body and entered my parade armor to return to the battle. I think an hour had passed for the army, as they were still mourning and lamenting my death. Someone must have seen the mangled armor and guessed wrong about my fate. Or correctly, but not to the final conclusion. Guys, this is very touching and all, but there are still books to loot and demons to kill. I spoke in my command voice, making my sons cheer and my daughters sob in real tears. You were dead. I saw you die. Primarch Vulcan noted with a logical voice. You were also dead, I countered with a careless voice, just as Sister Stern arrived on golden wings and stabbed me with her flaming sword, right in the heart. I could have dodged or done something, but I figured people would be suspicious. This was the warp, after all. Everyone stared in confusion as the Emperor's sword entered my body without breaking the armor, leaving only a drop of blood dripping from my chest plate. Idiot, you should have dodged. The Emperor's sword can kill anything. Ephraim wailed and hugged me tight. I nodded wisely and turned my head to wink at Traen. The next second, the Necron army of skeleton immortals and Traen himself vanished, along with a third of the books from the hidden library. You died too soon, human. Missed the best part of the fight. There was a huge golem. Nemerak began to complain, before stopping and changing his masked face from contempt to awe. That was also me. I was bored being dead. I joked lightly, but the Eldar Solitaire didn't return with his own joke. I knew it. I hear Menelo mutter behind me, sounding a bit angry and disappointed. Was I supposed to stay dead? The soul stones are ours, as agreed? Nemerak asked in a more respectful voice. Something must have spooked my jovial friend, but right now it was a bad time to ask what. I scanned the library and produced a pile of dead Eldar resting in their soul cages, right in front of the Solitaire. There must have been trillions of stones, as the pile was taller than a mountain. Sench must have killed plenty of Eldar for the last 60 million years. Nemeraka's mask returned to a polite, bland face. Then he glanced up at the Eldar Blackstone Fortress, only to vanish in flash of blue light, along with all the stones. However, the human solitaries were left behind, as the Eldar departed with their loot. A single Norn emissary emerged from the library, walking slowly, as to present itself as a non-threat. Emissary of the Omnisia, we are glad for this victory. Let your Emperor know, we are willing to join the Divine Compact on certain terms. The creature spoke in fluent Gothic, while looking left and right for escape avenues. Futile in my presence, but at least it showed a decent amount of fear. You stay away from my bloodline, and I won't enter the warp to terminate your mind. The Emperor will have his terms as well, but these are mine. Feel free to refuse. I propose with a calm voice. Then burn the emissary to ash. It only took a slight flex of my new powers, so why not? The hive mind got my warning. No need to preserve the messenger. Zath appeared at my side and grunted something like pact, friends, and allies, but I just scratched his wolf head while searching for Canis. My wolf was gone already, having entered the eye of judgment deeper inside the warp. Kairos, the twin angel, was gone as well, leaving only the Primarchs. Sadly, none of them had fled, giving me no reason to execute the traitor. Then a beam of golden light fell beside me, and a Grey Knight's Brotherhood, all sporting golden wings and glowing weapons, appeared by magic. Ordo Malleus claims jurisdiction over the unholy books in this Chaos Library, in the name of the Sanctus Imperator. Everyone, disperse and don't come back, the Grey Knight's master spoke with rabid conviction. I could take them, but they were only the tip of the furious Imperial faith. I would need to fight trillions of zealots just to keep the books, and I didn't even have psyker powers. I had a few millions of books already, and could visit Traen to read billions more. There was a Necron Lord before. He grabbed some books. I ratted out Traen with a sneaky voice. My Necron friend would be happy if some Grey Knights came to visit. Pef Lancefire, we were warned about you. Go back to the dark fringes of the galaxy. and live your life in peace. Your War Master rank is thus revoked," the Grey Knight proclaimed as a glowing sigil of an eagle appeared in his hand. I felt the compulsion of the Golden Throne, if it was still called that, flow through the sigil into my soul. I guess I was still human, and the Emperor of Mankind still had some influence over me. I should go home, that's true, but live in peace? Nah. In this universe, there is only war. I countered with a careless shrug, then grabbed my holy wife and returned to my ship, and then recovered the army and ordered the fleet around. Did he just resist the Emperor's truth? A new recruit asked the Brotherhood Master in an astonished voice. His daughter stomped you into the floor 1,000 times, Brother Darius. Start warding the damned books before they run away, the Grey Knight Master answered in an abrupt tone. Damned Lancefires and the Black Souls. But the Sovereign of Humanity had ordered them to be polite and treat Pef Lancefire as a visiting alien god. It will take time until the light of the Imperium Sanctus reach past Nocturne, where the dead zone split the galaxy in half 666 years ago. And yet, here in the warp, it had been only hours since that event. They had to secure the hidden library before the Black Wolf came barging in, like it always did. He even knew his true name, Lehman Russ, but rituals invoking the name didn't stop the monster like it did with normal great demons. And if the Holy Sovereign knew what the damned wolf was searching for, he didn't say. Reciting the Aurelian Psalm of St. Lorgar Urizen, the Grey Knight Master began indexing the cursed books, sentencing most for obliteration in the Holy Pyre, and selecting some as training manuals for the inevitably stupid new recruits. Being posses by a demon was indeed a great training experience for those that survived.